Tonight the veil thins and a clock you cannot see strikes its final beat. Whispers ride the wind, naming choices you've postponed. Open this message, or sleep through humanity's turning. What awakens in you now will decide what awakens in our world, before dawn breaks. Since the first spark leapt across darkness, civilizations have lived by borrowed time. Empires rise, oceans swallow shorelines, stars blink and blaze, and always we assume tomorrow will behave. But the universe is sending a final telegram across the night. Change is no longer approaching, it is here. This audiobook is not a forecast of doom, but a field guide for crossing thresholds with grace. It is a lantern held to your inner architecture, the switches you can flip when the lights flicker in the world outside. When old systems groan, something wiser wants to be born through you. You will hear of cycles the ancients tracked by moon and tide, the invisible agreements that shape economies, ecologies, and emotions. You will meet the quiet engineers within, attention, breath, imagination, who can retune your frequency when panic surges. We will not flee the sirens of collapse. We will listen for the instructions braided inside their song. Warning is a mercy when it arrives early enough to become preparation, and preparation is a prayer that becomes protection. This is your invitation to become a deliberate participant in the turning, not a spectator refreshing headlines, but a steward of meaning and momentum. Here, prophecy is practical. Rituals for stabilizing your nervous system, scripts for courageous conversations, blueprints for communal resilience. We will practice choosing timelines, revising stories, and planting possibilities in the dark where roots take hold. You were born for such hours as these. Inside the pressure is a doorway. Inside the doorway is a vow to carry more light than fear. If you listen closely, the universe's last warning is also its first promise. Everything changes, and you can change beautifully with it. Let us begin where all transformations start, with breath, with attention, with brave agreement to wake up before the morning does. Chapter 1. The Telegram in the Night. The night has a way of speaking when all other voices grow still. In the hum of the refrigerator, the low wail of a distant siren, or the beating of your own pulse against the sheets, something ancient slips through. It does not shout, for warnings are rarely heard when shouted. It sends telegrams instead, quiet, precise, encrypted in symbols your soul recognizes before your mind does. The universe's last warning is never delivered in bold headlines. It is felt in the tension under your ribs, in the strange urgency of dreams, in the sudden recognition that the familiar is no longer safe to lean on. For generations, we have been taught to look outward for announcements of change. We wait for leaders to declare emergencies, for markets to crash, for storms to roar across continents before we believe. Yet the universe works in whispers. It knows that only those who have learned to listen deeply will respond in time. Those who have tuned themselves to silence will notice the telegram slipped under the door of consciousness. Others will keep sleeping, the envelope unopened, until the fire burns too close to ignore. Imagine you are sitting by a darkened window, the world asleep, and suddenly a faint knock comes, so soft it could be mistaken for imagination. You hesitate. You question whether you even heard it, yet your heart quickens, your senses sharpen. This is how warnings arrive. They feel like tremors in the invisible web connecting everything. A bird flying out of season, a conversation you cannot shake, a recurring number on a clock, a feeling that tomorrow is heavier than today. The telegram in the night carries a paradox, urgency wrapped in stillness. You are not asked to panic. You are asked to awaken, to know that the threshold has already been crossed, even if the evidence has not yet reached the front page. When you begin to recognize these signals, you step out of the trance of delay. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and start asking, How shall I meet it? This is the first task of every soul facing transformation, not prediction, not escape, but presence. Warnings are mercies. They arrive not to frighten, but to prepare. And this preparation does not begin with bunkers or blueprints. It begins with breath, with listening, with the willingness to pause long enough to hear what your ancestors always knew. When the night trembles, pay attention. Something is shifting, something is asking for you. The telegram in the night is here. Its ink is made of intuition, its message pulsing through every nerve in your body. Do not discard it. Read it aloud with your heart, for in heeding it, you begin not only to survive what is changing, you begin to shape it. Chapter 2. Maps of the Tide. If the telegram is the whisper, the tide is the rhythm. Warnings are meaningless without context, and context is found in the patterns larger than our lifespans. The ancients looked at stars, moons, and oceans to orient themselves in time. They saw cycles repeating sometimes across centuries and recognized that crises and rebirths follow the cadence of tides. What rises will recede, what withdraws will return. But every tide is slightly different, carrying debris or treasures unseen before. Today we are estranged from these maps. We rely on quarterly reports, election calendars, or the latest algorithmic feed to tell us where we are. But the universe's warnings cannot be plotted on a digital graph. They move with cycles of consciousness, waves that ripple across cultures, generations, and civilizations. To read these tides is to understand that what feels unprecedented often echoes forgotten epochs. Collapse and renewal are older than pyramids, older than empires, older than the soil under your feet. The tide is rising now, unmistakably. Climate, politics, economies, relationships, every layer of life is swelling with pressure. Many mistake this swell as random chaos. But chaos is often pattern too large for the untrained eye. Like standing too close to a tapestry, you see only snarls of thread. Step back and the picture appears. Consider your own life as a shoreline. How many times have you felt pulled backward, emptied out, stripped of what you clung to? And how many times has that emptiness been followed by a wave greater than you imagined, carrying you further, faster than you would have dared alone? This is not failure, this is tide. The universe's warnings often arrive in the form of ebb, loss, absence, retreat, so that the next swell has space to arrive. To ignore the tide is to build castles too close to the shore, certain they will stand forever. But to live by the tide is to know when to release, when to wait, when to rise. The universe does not punish. It teaches rhythm. Those who learn to dance with it do not drown. They navigate. Your ancestors may not have called it energy or frequency, but they knew. Fishermen, farmers, healers, storytellers, they moved with the seasons and trusted the patterns. Today, your task is to remember what they remembered, that the warnings are not only about endings, but about timing. You are being invited to move in rhythm, with forces vast enough to topple kingdoms or raise them. The tide will not wait for permission. It will not slow to match your schedules. The map is written in water and sky, in cycles of crisis and renewal. You can resist it or you can ride it, but you cannot stop it. The warning is clear. The tide is already turning. The question is not if it rises, but whether you will rise with it. Chapter 3. The Agreement We Forgot. Every society rests on invisible contracts. You sign them without pen or paper. You agree to stand in line, to value money printed by strangers, to obey clocks invented before your birth. These agreements are the scaffolding of life, fragile yet so convincing we forget they are invented. The universe's warnings strike hardest when these contracts begin to fray. The agreement we forgot is simple. We are in relationship with everything. The air is not free, it is borrowed. The soil is not inert, it is alive. The neighbor you ignore is not irrelevant. They are a mirror. For centuries, humanity has acted as though we signed a different contract, the contract of separation. We convinced ourselves that nature was resource, people were competition, and meaning was optional. We built economies and empires on this false agreement, and for a while it seemed to hold. But false agreements eventually collapse. The universe allows them to stretch only so far before sending reminders. A pandemic, a drought, a breakdown of trust between governments and governed, these are not random punishments but overdue invoices from a contract we never should have ignored. The universe is asking us to remember the true agreement: interdependence. Look closely at your own life. How many of your struggles stem from believing you were alone, that your worth depended on individual achievement, that asking for help was weakness? These are echoes of the forgotten agreement. The truth is different. Every breath is collaboration with trees. Every meal is communion with soil, water, sun, and countless unseen hands. Every idea you've ever had was seeded by voices and influences beyond your conscious awareness. To remember the agreement is to re-enter belonging. It is to acknowledge that your fate is tied to strangers and streams, to ancestors and unborn children. It is to recognize that every choice either honors or denies the web you live within. The warning of collapse is not a verdict. It is a negotiation. The universe is reminding us that contracts can be rewritten, but only if we remember what we once signed. To live as though you are separate is to live in constant fracture. To live as though you are woven is to live in truth. This chapter of history is not simply about survival. It is about remembering the agreement that keeps survival meaningful. The universe's last warning is clear: return to the web, or the web will unravel beneath you. The choice is ours, but the reminder is relentless. We are bound, and in that binding lies both our responsibility and our redemption. Chapter 4: The Physics of Meaning. Meaning is not an abstract decoration on life. It is the very fabric that holds experience together. Remove it, and existence collapses into noise. Expand it, and everything you touch vibrates with purpose. When the universe sends warnings, it is not threatening punishment. It is reminding us that meaning is a law as binding as gravity. We pretend it is optional because it cannot be weighed or bottled, but the absence of meaning crushes us more thoroughly than any stone. Every human knows this law instinctively. When a tragedy strikes, people do not ask first about numbers or measurements. They ask why. When a child is born, we do not only count fingers and toes, we ask what life this soul might live. The hunger for meaning drives nations to war, inspires movements, births symphonies. Yet when cultures become drunk on distraction, meaning is outsourced. We let algorithms tell us what matters. We let markets determine value. We let noise drown the song that could guide us. But meaning, like energy, is neither created nor destroyed. It is directed. Attention is the steering wheel, and whatever you gaze upon expands. This is why despair metastasizes when you stare too long into chaos. It is also why hope multiplies when you fix your vision on beauty or resilience. The universe's last warning is this: where you place attention now will become the skeleton of the world to come. You are not only a witness, you are an architect. Consider how easily meaning is stolen. A headline provokes outrage, and suddenly hours vanish. A bitter memory rises, and the entire day bends toward its gravity. In those moments, you did not choose meaning. Meaning was chosen for you, but you can reverse this theft. The practice begins with noticing, where is my attention? What have I fed today? Have I nourished the gardens of imagination or poured water on weeds of fear? Ancient traditions spoke of this as prayer, meditation, or intention. Modern science might call it neuroplasticity, focus, or bias. But beneath the language is the same principle. Your mind becomes what it consumes. Feed it terror, and it grows cages. Feed it wonder, and it grows wings. The physics of meaning is impartial. It amplifies whatever it is given. This is why collapse feels contagious. One person begins to spiral, and those around them catch the vibration. Yet this is also why courage is magnetic. A single calm presence in the middle of storm can reset an entire room. You have felt this, though perhaps you called it charisma, or peace, or wisdom. It is simply the force of meaning reoriented. To work with meaning consciously is to wield one of the most underestimated powers in existence. It is not denial, pretending storms are sunny skies. It is anchoring yourself in the truth that storms themselves carry purpose. To cleanse, to renew, to force deeper roots. When you grasp this, warnings stop sounding like threats and begin sounding like invitations. The universe's telegrams are not random riddles. They are requests for you to decide what story you are telling. Because story is meaning structured over time, and story shapes destiny. What you narrate about this moment, whether you call it collapse or initiation, ending or birth, will determine the doorway you step through. You may not choose every circumstance, but you do choose its meaning. This is your power, and it is more radical than it appears. Because when enough people give the same meaning to an event, that meaning becomes culture. And culture builds the scaffolding of reality itself. So pause. Ask yourself, what does this moment mean to me? Who will I become if I call this season destruction? Who will I become if I call it awakening? The answer is not just philosophy. It is physics. It is architecture. It is the raw material from which tomorrow is being built. Chapter 5. Calm as a Technology. When panic spreads, we imagine the most valuable resources are fuel, money, food. But beneath all survival is the most overlooked technology in existence: calm. Not the shallow calm of silence in a tense room, but the profound calm that emanates from deep nervous system regulation. The universe's warnings strike panic into the unprepared, but they awaken calm in those who have learned to steward their own bodies as instruments of stability. Calm is contagious. You have felt it in the presence of someone who does not flinch, even as circumstances collapse. Their breath remains slow, their eyes steady, their words deliberate. Without speaking, they remind you that chaos is not final. Their presence transmits safety the way fire transmits heat. This is not a personality trait. It is a cultivated practice, a technology available to anyone willing to train. Your nervous system is a tuning fork. When it vibrates in panic, everything you perceive is amplified threat. When it vibrates in calm, even danger becomes information instead of annihilation. The difference between drowning and surfing is not the wave, it is the body's response. And calm is the mastery that allows you to ride what others fear. Practicing calm begins in the smallest of moments. Notice your breath when you check your phone. Notice your posture when you hear news of disaster. Notice the stories your mind rehearses when waiting in traffic. Each moment is an opportunity to install calm instead of chaos. Breathe slowly, in through the nose, out longer than you inhale. Straighten your spine to tell your body it is not prey. Place your hand on your chest to anchor presence. These rituals are not trivial. They are rewiring. When cultures face upheaval, panic becomes epidemic. Leaders who command armies of attention understand this. Fear is profitable, addictive, and contagious. But calm is stronger, because calm gives access to choice. A panicked person reacts, blindly following scripts implanted by fear. A calm person responds, selecting pathways invisible to those caught in frenzy. The universe's last warning is not urging you to stockpile more supplies than your neighbor. It is urging you to become the kind of person whose calm steadies neighbors, whose calm rewrites rooms, whose calm itself is a form of shelter. Imagine a family huddled in darkness during blackout. The one who keeps their voice steady, who breathes slowly, who lights a candle instead of screaming, that is the true provider. That is the bearer of technology greater than batteries or currency. Calm is not passivity. It is not pretending nothing is wrong. Calm is courage stabilized. It is action aligned instead of action scrambled. It is the ability to enter the burning building not because you are unafraid, but because you can carry your fear without letting it drag you. Every spiritual lineage has taught this. Be still and know. Empty your mind. Breathe. Yet in modernity, calm is often sold as a luxury. Spa days, retreats, escapism. In truth, calm is the most practical survival tool available. It costs nothing but practice. It requires no equipment but your own willingness. It transforms not only you, but every life entangled with yours. As the universe shifts, calm will be the true currency. Those who cultivate it will navigate storms, not because storms vanish, but because calm itself is the boat. The last warning is clear. Train now, breathe now, practice now, for the tide is rising, and only those who carry calm will remember how to steer. Chapter 6. Clearing the Static. Static is the sound of interference. On an old radio, it drowns the song you are trying to hear. In a life, static drowns the voice of intuition, the guidance of the universe, the clarity of your own knowing. The last warning arrives clearly, but most cannot hear it. Their frequencies are clogged with noise. Consider how much static hums through your daily experience. The endless scroll of headlines, the commentary of strangers, the replay of ancient fears, the ceaseless notifications, chirping like synthetic birds. This static convinces you that the world is nothing but chaos, that you are powerless, that clarity is impossible. But static is not truth. Static is the distortion of truth. The universe's telegrams are precise, but they require a clear channel. Just as a telescope cannot reveal stars in daylight pollution, your mind cannot detect guidance when saturated with noise. Clearing static is not about rejecting the world. It is about tuning. Begin with inputs. What enters your eyes and ears becomes the raw material of thought. Ask yourself, what percentage of my attention has been spent on noise? On opinions I did not request? On conflicts that do not belong to me? Reduce this clutter and the signal emerges. Silence is not absence. It is amplification of what matters. Next, clear the static inside. Old grudges, looping regrets, self-criticism, all these replay like broken records. To clear them, you must forgive. Forgiveness is not condoning, it is releasing static. It is refusing to let yesterday's noise interfere with today's guidance. Finally, clear your environment. Spaces hold vibration. Cluttered rooms echo cluttered minds. Objects tied to old identities hum with static of who you no longer are. Release them. Create emptiness not as lack, but as channel. The clearer the space, the stronger the message. When you clear static, you rediscover the quiet frequency where warnings become wisdom. You notice coincidences aligning like breadcrumbs. You feel instincts sharpen. You recognize that the universe was never silent. You were simply tuned to the wrong station. The last warning is not hidden. It is broadcast on every breeze, every heartbeat, every intuitive nudge. But static keeps you deaf. Clear it, and you will hear the song again. And in that song lies instruction, comfort, and the map of how to walk forward when everything you know is changing forever. Chapter 7. The Three Switches. Every storm begins inside before it surrounds you. The waves that crash in the outer world are always preceded by a shift in the currents within. To prepare for what is rising, you must know how to reach for the inner levers. The switches that instantly change your state. These switches are not complex machines hidden in secret temples. They are the simplest tools available, overlooked precisely because of their simplicity. Attention, language, posture. These three switches, when deliberately engaged, reconfigure your entire experience. The first switch is attention. Wherever your attention goes, energy follows. It is the ancient law that even children know instinctively. Stare at a flame and the flame seems to grow larger. Turn your eyes and it recedes into background. Attention is the seed of meaning, the lens that magnifies or diminishes reality. The universe's warnings grow louder when your attention is scattered, because static multiplies in neglected fields. But the moment you gather your gaze, the chaos shrinks. Ask yourself, what am I looking at right now? Is it nourishing me or draining me? Even in crisis, shifting attention from what you cannot control to what is present within your reach changes everything. A person who focuses on the breath rather than the panic is no longer hostage to fear. The second switch is language. Words are not just descriptors, they are builders. Every phrase you speak etches grooves into your subconscious, laying tracks for the future to travel. When you say, "This is impossible," you build a wall. When you say, "This is challenging but possible," you open a gate. The universe listens not to your wishes, but to the instructions embedded in your words. Notice your self-talk when warnings arrive. Do you say, "I can't handle this," or do you say, "I am learning to navigate this"? The difference is not cosmetic, it is architectural. Shift your language and you shift your reality. The third switch is posture. Your body is not a passenger, it is the control panel of your entire state. A slumped spine, collapsed chest, and shallow breathing send signals of defeat to your brain, convincing it the battle is already lost. But straighten your spine, open your chest, plant your feet firmly on the ground, and a different chemistry floods your system. Courage returns not because danger disappeared, but because your body remembered its ancient stance of resilience. This is why warriors trained in rituals of bearing long before stepping into battle. The body is the gateway to the mind, and posture is the password. When the three switches are activated together, transformation is immediate. Imagine yourself in the midst of panic, your heart racing, your thoughts spiraling. Now you pause. You gather your attention to the breath. You shift your words from "I can't" to "I am steady." You adjust your posture, lifting your chest toward the sky. In less than a minute, your inner world recalibrates. The outer storm has not changed, but you have, and because you have, you will navigate it differently. The universe's last warning is not meant to paralyze you. It is meant to remind you that power is not found in elaborate systems, but in elemental switches available to everyone. Master these, and you are never powerless. Forget them, and even small challenges will drown you. The task now is to practice daily. Catch yourself when attention wanders into despair, when words crumble into defeat, when posture collapses into submission. Flip the switches again and again until it becomes natural, until it becomes your default response to change. In times of upheaval, the ones who will lead are not those with the loudest voices or the deepest coffers, but those who know how to steady themselves with the simplest of gestures. The three switches are ancient technology disguised as ordinary life, and when the world tilts, they are enough to keep you upright. Chapter 8. Emotions as Engineers. We are taught to treat emotions as intruders, unwelcome guests who storm into the house of the mind and overturn the furniture. Fear, anger, grief, these are cast as enemies to be banished or suppressed. But what if every emotion is not a saboteur, but an engineer? What if each feeling carries blueprints for building bridges between who you are and who you must become? The universe's warnings are often delivered not in words or symbols, but in the emotional surges that rise unbidden from within. Fear, for instance, is not merely panic. It is a signal that your system has identified a threshold. When listened to, fear sharpens senses, heightens awareness, and prepares you to meet the unknown. But when rejected, fear metastasizes into paralysis. The engineer arrives with tools, but if you slam the door, those tools rust into weapons against you. Grief is another misunderstood builder. We treat it as the shadow that must be escaped. Yet grief clears foundations. It strips away the illusions of permanence, reminding you that all structures decay. In its raw ache lies a ruthless wisdom. Nothing you cling to lasts forever, so plant only what you are willing to release. Those who learn to walk with grief discover that it clears ground for new construction, creating space for resilience to rise. Anger, too, is an engineer. It comes to show you where a boundary has been broken, where an injustice requires redress. Suppress it, and it corrodes from within. Express it recklessly, and it destroys what it was meant to protect. But harness it, and anger becomes a fire that forges courage and catalyzes change. Joy, the most celebrated of emotions, is also an engineer. It lays bridges across divides, binds communities, fuels endurance. Joy is not frivolous, it is fuel. Those who dismiss joy as childish miss its architectural power. No civilization survives without celebration. Even in collapse, joy is what keeps hands steady enough to rebuild. The task is not to silence emotions, but to apprentice yourself to them. When the universe sends you a surge of feeling, pause and ask, "What are you building in me? What structure is this emotion designing?" You will find that every emotion carries hidden instructions. Anxiety may be pointing you to prepare more thoroughly. Excitement may be guiding you toward expansion. Sadness may be urging you to slow down and integrate. The true danger is not emotion itself, but ignorance of its message. Cultures that demonize emotions breed people who live in constant war with themselves, deaf to the warnings delivered through their own bloodstream. To embrace emotions as engineers is to finally hear the universe's internal telegrams with clarity. Practice begins with permission. When a strong emotion arises, instead of saying, "Go away," say, "Teach me." Feel it fully in the body, the racing pulse, the heat in the chest, the heaviness in the stomach. Then ask, if this emotion were an architect, what blueprint is it showing me? You will discover answers not in rational thought, but in visceral knowing. In times of transformation, emotions surge like storms. Some will be overwhelming, but if you learn to see them as builders rather than enemies, you will discover that even the fiercest waves are scaffolding you for the new world. The universe does not waste energy. Every emotion you feel is purposeful, precise, and part of the construction of your becoming. Trust them, work with them, and let them build the resilience you will need for what is arriving. Chapter 9, Body as Barometer. The body is the first prophet and the last. Long before headlines declare crisis, your body whispers it. Long before science confirms patterns, your skin, stomach, breath, and bones record the truth. We are trained to distrust these signals, to overrule them with logic or numb them with distraction. But the universe's last warning resounds most clearly in the body, for the body is a barometer of truth. When tension coils in your shoulders day after day, it is not simply bad posture. It is your body forecasting pressure. When your sleep fractures into restless fragments, it is not simply insomnia. It is your body warning that your rhythms are misaligned. When your gut clenches at the thought of a decision, it is not weakness. It is a compass pointing away from danger. The signals are constant, but most of us live deafened to them, convinced the body is a machine to be managed, rather than a living oracle to be consulted. Ancient cultures knew better. Shamans listened to tremors in their own flesh as carefully as to the cries of the tribe. Healers placed hands on their hearts before advising others. Farmers knew that their fatigue mirrored the soil's depletion, that their appetites shifted with the harvest. The body was never separate from the cosmos. It was an instrument tuned to its vibrations. To reclaim the body as barometer, you must first believe it again. The next time unease surfaces in your stomach during a conversation, trust it as data. The next time your skin prickles before entering a space, trust it as signal. The body does not lie. It has no interest in politeness or theory. It simply transmits what is. The universe's last warning often bypasses intellect, because intellect can rationalize, deny, argue, but the body cannot. A heart racing in the middle of the night is not persuaded by excuses. A chest tightening in the presence of deceit cannot be soothed by logic. To ignore the body is to unplug the most reliable alarm system you have been given. This is not only about survival, it is also about guidance. The body does not only predict danger, it also reveals alignment. When you speak truth, notice how the breath deepens. When you walk into a space meant for you, notice the way your shoulders relax. When you meet someone who will matter, notice how your body leans unconsciously closer. These are not accidents, they are confirmations. The body not only warns of storms, it also points towards safe harbors. To work with the body as barometer, begin with stillness. Place your hand on your chest and ask, "What do you want me to know?" Sit in silence and listen not for words, but for sensations, warmth, heaviness, expansion. These are the vocabulary of your deeper intelligence. Over time, you will find that your body answers more honestly than your mind ever could. As the world shifts, the most dangerous choice is to live severed from the instrument designed to guide you. Reconnection is not indulgence, it is survival. The universe is speaking through tight jaws, shallow breaths, restless sleep, hungry hearts. To ignore these signals is to step blindly into storms. To honor them is to carry a compass that no external chaos can disable. The last warning is already etched in your flesh. Your body knows when something is wrong, and it knows when the path ahead is right. Learn its language. Trust its signals. For the body is not simply your source, it is the universe itself, measuring pressure, forecasting storms, and whispering which direction will keep you alive and aligned when everything you know begins to change forever. Chapter 10. Sanctuary Protocols. Every civilization that has survived upheaval did so not only through weapons, strategies, or treaties, but through sanctuaries, spaces that steadied the human spirit when the world outside convulsed. Sanctuary is not merely a building of stone or wood. It is a vibration, an atmosphere, a place where chaos cannot command. The universe's last warning presses upon us with urgency. Create your sanctuaries now. For in times of collapse, the difference between despair and renewal lies in whether you know how to build a chamber of peace around your life. A sanctuary begins in the body. Before you arrange furniture, light candles, or speak words, your nervous system must be the first temple. If you enter a space trembling with panic, no amount of incense or music will restore you. But if you breathe slowly, regulate your heart, and remember your spine as a pillar of stillness, the sanctuary begins wherever you stand. Imagine yourself as the altar and everything else as extensions of your calm. The second layer is environment. Every object hums with memory. A gift from a loved one carries warmth, while an item tied to past failure carries static. To craft sanctuary, you must curate deliberately. Remove what pulls you into fear or resentment. Keep only what stabilizes and uplifts. A single stone from a river can anchor you more deeply than shelves cluttered with distraction. When the ancients built temples, they aligned them with stars and seasons. When you build your sanctuary, align it with your truth. The third layer is ritual. Sanctuaries are not meant to be museums. They are living spaces that awaken when you interact with them. A sanctuary might involve lighting a single candle at night, whispering gratitude before sleep, or singing quietly in the morning. These repeated gestures engrave calm into the walls and into your nervous system. Over time, the very air of the space becomes saturated with peace, and simply entering it recalibrates you. But sanctuary is not only personal, it is communal. In moments of crisis, entire groups survive because they gather in shared rituals of steadiness. Villages that sang together through war, families that prayed together through famine, communities that shared meals even when food was scarce. These sanctuaries of togetherness became stronger than any weapon. If you create sanctuary only for yourself, it will protect one. If you create sanctuary with others, it will protect many. The universe's warning is also about digital sanctuaries. Today, our minds live as much online as in rooms of wood and brick. Yet few curate their digital spaces with the same reverence they give to bedrooms or gardens. Notifications scream, feeds flood, noise drowns. But you can turn this realm into sanctuary too. Choose what voices you allow near your attention. Silence those who sow chaos. Amplify those who cultivate wisdom. Sanctuary protocols apply everywhere you dwell, including the invisible rooms of the internet. Why does sanctuary matter so urgently? Because transformation is not endured through constant battle. Even warriors retreat to heal, to regroup, to remember why they fight. Without sanctuaries, you burn out long before the change is complete. But with sanctuaries, you transform in rhythm, engaging, retreating, restoring, returning. The rhythm is what sustains the journey. Begin now. Stand in the doorway of your room and ask, what here steadies me? What here drains me? Walk into your own breath and ask, what rhythms bring me calm? What rhythms keep me fractured? Look at your circle of people and ask, who is a sanctuary? Who is a storm? The answers will guide you. Then, with courage, remove what disrupts and nurture what restores. The last warning is not only about impending danger, it is also about the urgent call to create spaces where light can endure. Sanctuary is not weakness, it is strategy. It is how you preserve the fire when winds howl, so that when dawn comes, you still carry the flame. Chapter 11. The Myth We're In. Every age is guided by a myth, whether its people know it or not. Myths are not just stories told by poets or inscribed on temple walls. They are invisible scripts that shape entire civilizations. They tell us who we are, why we exist, and what destiny awaits us. The myth we are in now is fraying, and the universe's last warning comes as the unraveling of its threads. The dominant myth of the modern world has been the myth of progress, the belief that humanity marches ever forward, that technology will save us, that tomorrow will always be better than today. This myth carried us far. It built bridges, cured diseases, and extended lives. But myths, like all structures, reach limits. The myth of progress is cracking under the weight of ecological collapse, social unrest, and spiritual emptiness. We are discovering that not all forward motion is evolution. Some is destruction disguised as triumph. When myths collapse, people feel lost. The world no longer makes sense. What once seemed inevitable, endless growth, endless comfort, endless stability, suddenly feels fragile. This is why despair spreads so quickly. But despair is simply the space left when one myth dies and another has not yet been born. The universe's warning is this: we cannot cling to a dying myth, nor can we drift mythless. We must choose and tell a new story. The power of myth is immense. When an entire culture believes in one story, it manifests realities to match. If the story is that nature is a machine, then forests are cut into lumber and oceans into resources. If the story is that humans are stewards, then forests become sacred groves and oceans become teachers. The story changes everything. Your role in this moment is to become a myth maker. Do not wait for governments or corporations to craft the story. It begins with the words you use with your children, the symbols you honor in your home, the way you interpret events. Call this time collapse, and you will breed fear. Call this time initiation, and you will breed courage. Ancient cultures told myths not as entertainment, but as orientation. When storms came, they reminded themselves of gods wrestling in the skies. When harvests failed, they told stories of cycles and rebirth. These myths did not erase hardship. They gave hardship meaning. They helped people endure and even thrive because they could locate themselves inside a larger pattern. The myth we need now is one that restores relationship. A story where humans are not masters but partners of Earth. A story where technology is servant, not master. A story where progress is measured not by speed, but by harmony. This myth is not a fantasy. It is an operating system, waiting for enough of us to install it. Each time you tell yourself, I am part of a larger whole, you are rehearsing the new myth. Each time you honor silence, kindness, or resilience, you are reinforcing it. Each time you gather with others to share dreams of a better world, you are writing its chapters. The universe's last warning is really a mythic invitation. The old story is ending. Will you cling to it until it drags you down, or will you breathe life into the new one? Remember, myths are not found, they are made. And the myth you choose to embody will ripple through generations long after you are gone. Chapter 12, Timeline Selection. Time is not a straight road, no matter how clocks and calendars try to convince you. It is more like a river splitting into countless streams, each one a possible future, each one waiting for you to step into it. The universe's last warning presses with urgency because humanity is standing at a branching. Which timeline we enter depends not on fate alone, but on choice, attention, and alignment. Most live as though there is only one inevitable tomorrow. They stumble forward, believing destiny is written in stone. But in truth, every thought, every word, every act shifts the course of the stream. The power of timeline selection is not esoteric mystery. It is daily practice. At every moment, you are choosing which future to fertilize. Consider this. Two people face the same crisis. One focuses on doom, repeating words of despair, reinforcing stories of collapse. Their attention feeds a timeline of despair, and soon their life aligns with it. The other focuses on possibility, repeating words of resilience, reinforcing stories of transformation. Their attention feeds a different stream, and soon opportunities align. The circumstances are the same, but the chosen timelines diverge like rivers. Timeline selection begins in imagination, not fantasy, but disciplined rehearsal. Close your eyes and walk into the life you desire. Feel it with detail. The smell of the air, the sound of your voice when you speak with confidence, the warmth of the relationships around you. This practice is not escapism, it is selection. The subconscious mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined experience and lived experience. When you practice, you are installing coordinates, guiding your steps toward the chosen stream. The next stage is alignment. Imagination alone is not enough. You must live as though the timeline is already arriving. If you select a timeline of health but continue to treat your body as disposable, the stream will not hold you. If you select abundance but continue to narrate scarcity, you block the flow. Timeline selection requires integrity, thought, word, and action moving in the same direction. The final stage is surrender. For once you have chosen, you must release attachment to how the timeline unfolds. Control is the enemy of flow. Rivers bend, twist, and carve paths unexpected. Trust that your selection is honored, even if the route feels unfamiliar. The key is not micromanaging every detail, but holding steady in your conviction of arrival. The universe's warning is this: the collective is also selecting timelines. Every news story, every collective narrative feeds one stream or another. If enough people feed fear, that timeline strengthens. If enough people feed possibility, that timeline strengthens. You are not powerless in this. Your selection matters. Each individual choice contributes to the tipping of collective rivers. Begin today. Notice when you are rehearsing a timeline you do not want. Catch yourself narrating collapse, scarcity, or helplessness. Pause. Choose again. Speak words of the stream you desire. Act in alignment with its energy. Trust that you are not waiting for the future, you are creating it. In the end, timeline selection is the art of sovereignty. It is how you reclaim your place as co-creator rather than victim of fate. The last warning is not that the future is doomed, but that futures are diverging, and you must decide which one will claim you. Choose with clarity, choose with courage, for the stream you step into now will carry you, and perhaps countless others, for generations to come. Chapter 13. The Language of Turning. Every threshold in history has been marked not only by events but by the words chosen to describe them. Wars are fueled by slogans, revolutions sparked by proclamations, renaissances born through poems and declarations whispered into hungry hearts. The universe's last warning is not only carved into the shifting landscape of events, but hidden in the language we use to interpret them. Words are not labels, they are incantations. They set the frame, and the frame becomes the world. Imagine two people standing before the same crumbling building. One calls it ruin, the other calls it foundation. The word each chooses will shape not only how they feel in that moment, but what they do next. The one who speaks of ruin will despair, retreat, perhaps walk away. The one who speaks of foundation will dream, rebuild, and carve hope into the cracks. The same event, two different realities. Language is the hinge. For too long, the dominant language of our age has been the language of conquest and scarcity. We speak of markets capturing customers, of nations competing for resources, of people winning or losing, as though life is a tournament with few trophies. And so we build worlds that mirror these words: zero-sum games, extractive economies, restless hearts. The warning we face is that if we do not learn a new tongue, the story of collapse will write itself without our consent. Language of turning begins with reframing endings as beginnings. Do not call it collapse, call it transformation. Do not call it disaster, call it revelation. Do not call it breakdown, call it breakthrough. This does not mean denying pain or romanticizing loss. It means naming events in ways that keep doors open rather than sealing them shut. The words you speak about your world become the architecture your subconscious builds within. The ancients knew this. They named storms after gods, not to dismiss their destruction, but to recognize their role in cosmic balance. They sang chants during planting and harvest because they understood that words spoken with reverence infused crops with resilience. Every prayer, every hymn, every poem was more than art. It was instruction to reality. You, too, are a poet whether you admit it or not. Every time you describe your life, you cast a spell. I am broken, and the body obeys. I am healing, and the cells conspire to restore. This is hopeless, and doors vanish. This is my initiation. And suddenly paths appear where none were before. The task now is deliberate speech. Practice replacing words of defeat with words of possibility. Train yourself to notice when you reinforce despair. Instead of saying, I'm overwhelmed, try, I'm learning to expand my capacity. Instead of, everything is falling apart, try, everything unnecessary is being stripped away. Small shifts accumulate, and before long, the entire tone of your life transforms. The universe's last warning is also collective. The language we choose as cultures will decide whether we stumble into collapse or stride into renewal. If we speak constantly of catastrophe, we will behave as though nothing can be saved. If we speak of regeneration, we will act with the courage to rebuild. Words ignite movements because they create a shared field of possibility. So guard your tongue as you would guard your heart. Speak as though every word were a seed, and it is. Ask yourself daily, what garden am I planting with my language? Weeds of despair or blossoms of courage? Do not underestimate this power, for when everything is turning, language becomes the rudder steering the ship of humanity, and in your mouth lies a fragment of that steering. Chapter 14, Boundaries That Bless. When the tides of change rise, many drown not because the waters are too strong, but because they did not know how to draw boundaries. They let every demand enter, every voice dictate, every fear consume. Boundaries are not barriers to keep life away. Boundaries are sacred channels that keep life flowing in alignment. The universe's last warning comes with this clarity. Without boundaries, transformation will break you. With boundaries, transformation will remake you. We often misunderstand boundaries as rejection. Saying no feels like turning away from life. But in truth, every no is a yes to something deeper. When you refuse what drains you, you say yes to vitality. When you decline what distracts, you say yes to focus. When you close the door to noise, you say yes to the silence where guidance speaks. Boundaries are not selfish, they are generous. They protect the conditions necessary for you to bring your best self into the world. Look at the natural world. Rivers flourish because banks hold their flow. Forests thrive because ecosystems establish territories. Even the human body is sustained by membranes and skin that separate inside from outside. Boundaries are not unnatural. They are life's way of preserving integrity. When you honor boundaries, you align with the very design of creation. But boundaries are more than walls. They are blessings. They communicate love to yourself and clarity to others. Consider how children flourish when parents provide firm but compassionate limits, or how relationships deepen when partners express clear needs instead of simmering in resentment. Boundaries liberate by removing guesswork and fostering trust. The challenge arises because collapse tempts us to abandon boundaries. We think, the world is falling apart. I must say yes to everything, help everyone, sacrifice completely. But this frantic generosity burns out the giver, leaving nothing sustainable. The universe whispers instead, honor your limits and your light will last. No candle can illuminate the room if it burns itself out too soon. To create boundaries that bless, begin by asking, what drains me consistently? What nourishes me consistently? Then build gates around those answers. Say no to what erodes you, yes to what restores you. This practice requires courage because others may not understand. They may call you selfish, rigid, or cold. But the truth is, your boundaries are a gift to them too. For when you guard your energy, you show up more present, more loving, more real. Boundaries are also collective. Societies collapse when they cannot say no to endless growth, no to destructive exploitation, no to systems that harm. Collective renewal requires collective boundaries, protecting forests, oceans, communities. A culture without boundaries devours itself. A culture with boundaries blesses generations. The last warning asks, where are your leaks? Where have you given permission for forces to siphon your energy, attention, or resources without reciprocity? Name them, seal them, bless them as you release them. For every time you honor your boundary, you make space for life to flow as it should. And in times of transformation, nothing is more vital than channels that flow clean and clear. Chapter 15, Rituals for Crossing. Every passage in human life has been marked by ritual. Birth, death, marriage, planting, harvest, war, peace, all were once honored with ceremonies that helped individuals and communities move from one state to another. Rituals anchor change, giving the soul a map when the world feels uncertain. The universe's last warning carries not only the urgency of what is coming, but the reminder of how to meet it, through ritual. Without ritual, change feels chaotic, like stepping from one cliff to another with no bridge. With ritual, change feels like entering a sacred passage, guided by symbols and gestures that whisper, "You are not lost. You are transforming." Ritual does not erase difficulty, but it provides context, rhythm, and meaning. Consider the ritual of lighting a candle. On the surface, it is a small act, but symbolically, it is immense. Striking fire against darkness, illuminating what was hidden, honoring the flame that survives. Or the ritual of washing hands, mundane in daily life, yet sacred when performed with intention, symbolizing purification, release, readiness for the new. Rituals are bridges between worlds. In times of upheaval, you need rituals for crossing. When you end a job, create a small ceremony of closure. Write gratitude for what you learned, burn what you release, plant a seed for what you wish to grow. When you move into a new home, cleanse the space with sound or scent, naming it as sanctuary. When you feel despair rising, pause to breathe with hands over heart, whispering words of courage until your nervous system remembers steadiness. Rituals need not be elaborate. What matters is intention. The universe listens not to the complexity of your gestures, but to the sincerity behind them. Even a single deep breath taken with reverence can be a ritual, marking the crossing from fear into presence. Communities, too, must reclaim ritual. When collective thresholds arrive, climate shifts, cultural reckonings, political upheavals, we need Bamjal more than policies. We need ceremonies that remind us we are participants in something larger than ourselves. Festivals of renewal, public acts of mourning, communal oaths of stewardship. These are the rituals that knit fractured societies back into wholeness. The last warning is clear. Crossings are inevitable. The only choice is whether you stumble blindly or walk ceremonially. With ritual, each threshold becomes sacred. Each ending becomes seed. Each warning becomes invitation. You will not stop the tide, but you will step into it with dignity, with reverence, with the strength that comes from knowing you are not merely enduring change, you are consecrating it. Chapter 16, Micro-Bravery Daily. Courage is often imagined as a single grand act. Charging into battle, leaping into fire, standing alone against armies of opposition. Yet history and the universe alike reveal a subtler truth. The future does not pivot on rare moments of explosive bravery, but on the quiet accumulation of small daily choices that train the heart to stay open when everything else insists it should close. The universe's last warning is not calling you to wait for the extraordinary moment. It is calling you to practice micro-bravery daily, for the muscle of courage must be exercised long before the storm reaches its peak. Micro-bravery looks deceptively simple. It is telling the truth in a conversation where silence would be easier. It is making eye contact with a stranger when you feel invisible. It is putting down your phone and returning to the raw presence of your body when escape into distraction calls louder. Each of these acts is tiny, almost invisible to the world, but monumental to your nervous system. They signal to your soul, I am willing to stand here. I am willing to choose presence over withdrawal. I am willing to be real. Why does this matter? Because when great thresholds arrive, your body does not suddenly learn new skills. It defaults to its training. If you have rehearsed avoidance, you will avoid. If you have rehearsed numbing, you will numb. But if you have rehearsed micro-bravery, your system will reach for it naturally. You will stand when others collapse. You will breathe when others choke. You will step forward even as fear screams its warning. Imagine your day as 1,000 doorways. Each doorway asks for a choice. Will you walk through with bravery or with retreat? Most of these doors appear in ordinary clothing. Answering an uncomfortable email, expressing affection first, admitting a mistake, asking for help, offering forgiveness. Yet each doorway is training you. Each choice deposits either strength or weakness into the vault of your being. When the final alarms sound, what you have stored is all you will carry. Micro-bravery also rewrites the nervous system's relationship with fear. Instead of seeing fear as a wall, you begin to see it as a threshold. Each time you lean into discomfort, you stretch the edges of what is possible. The sting of fear diminishes, replaced by the quiet exhilaration of expansion. Eventually, fear becomes less of a stop sign and more of a compass. It points directly to where your growth awaits. The universe whispers, "Do not wait for perfect conditions to practice. Begin now in the mess of your ordinary day. Say the kind word you are tempted to withhold. Set the boundary that trembles on your lips. Try the skill you fear you will fail at." Each of these acts is a brick in the fortress of resilience you are building. Micro-bravery also radiates outward. One person willing to display small acts of courage becomes a mirror for others. When you speak truth gently in a meeting, someone else finds permission to do the same. When you acknowledge vulnerability in your family, others exhale in relief. Bravery multiplies through imitation, and soon what felt impossible becomes common language. The last warning is this: if you do not train yourself in daily micro-bravery, the tides of transformation will overwhelm you. But if you build courage one moment at a time, you will meet change not as a victim, but as a participant. Begin where you are. The next act of micro-bravery is waiting within your breath, your words, your posture. Choose it again and again until bravery is no longer an exception, but your nature. Chapter 17, Skill over Panic. Panic is instinctual. It rises fast, burns hot, and clouds the mind with smoke so thick that truth cannot be seen. Panic convinces you that reaction is salvation. Yet the universe's last warning makes something plain. Panic has never saved anyone. It scatters energy, wastes time, and magnifies danger. What endures, what rescues, what transforms is skill. In every crisis, it is not the one who flails most wildly who survives. It is the one who knows what to do and does it steadily. Skill is the antidote to panic. Skill begins with presence. You cannot apply knowledge if your mind is running in frantic circles. A skilled person breathes first, steadies themselves, and allows the body's intelligence to surface. They may not know every answer, but calm opens access to intuition, memory, and creativity that panic would bury. Imagine two sailors in a storm. One screams, waves arms, imagines doom. The other grips the ropes, remembers training, adjusts sails. The storm is the same. The outcome diverges entirely. Skill is built long before the test. It is accumulated in practice, in repetition, in humble daily preparation. The one who has practiced fire drills calmly saves others when flames erupt. The one who has rehearsed words of compassion daily can speak peace when arguments explode. Panic arrives only for the unprepared. For the trained, crisis is simply a stage to perform what they already know. To choose skill over panic is to invest in readiness. Ask yourself, what skills do I lack that would steady me in collapse? Do I know how to listen deeply? Do I know how to regulate my emotions? Do I know how to build community, repair conflict, grow food, hold silence? Each of these is a survival skill, not only for body but for soul. Each one, when practiced, becomes a shield against the fog of panic. But skill is not only practical, it is spiritual. It is the discipline of aligning action with intention, even when chaos tempts you to scatter. Skill teaches the nervous system to remember that clarity is possible. It reminds you that you are not helpless, that even small actions taken with precision matter more than frantic thrashing. The skilled carpenter hammers one nail steadily, while the panicked laborer smashes wildly and destroys the frame. Skill builds, panic destroys. This is why elders and teachers of every tradition emphasize practice. Monks rehearsed chants daily, not because they needed them in quiet cloisters, but because they knew the day would come when storms of fear demanded steady voices. Warriors trained endlessly with wooden swords, not to display strength, but to make strength instinctive when survival hung on a heartbeat. Skill is discipline transformed into instinct. Panic thrives on ignorance. It convinces you there is nothing you can do, that danger is absolute. But skill whispers otherwise. There is always one action, one breath, one word that can shift the trajectory. And if you know how to find it, you can anchor not only yourself, but others. The universe's last warning presses this question. Will you spend your time rehearsing panic or rehearsing skill? Will you feed fear with endless speculation or feed wisdom with daily practice? The storms are not avoidable, but how you meet them is entirely your choice. So cultivate skill now. Learn what strengthens you. Teach others what steadies them. Practice until it is woven into your bones. And when panic tries to seduce you, you will smile gently, breathe deeply, and let skill steer the ship while the storm rages outside. Chapter 18. The Commons Repaired. No human survives alone, though the myths of modernity have tried to convince us otherwise. Entire economies, technologies, and ideologies have exalted the individual as the supreme unit of existence. But the universe's last warning is a reminder of what we have always known in our bones. Survival is collective, resilience is communal, and the commons, shared resources, shared wisdom, shared responsibility, are the lifelines of life itself. The commons once meant forests, rivers, grazing fields, where communities understood that shared stewardship was sacred. To harm the commons was to harm oneself. But over time, greed fractured this awareness. The commons were privatized, fenced, monetized, and exploited. Water became commodity, air became dumping ground, soil became possession. We forgot that nothing truly belongs to us, that we belong to the web of life together. Now, as collapse whispers louder, we see the cost of this forgetting. The isolated individual is fragile. A single household cannot withstand storms, pandemics, or systemic shifts. But communities that repair the commons by sharing resources, building trust, protecting land, and honoring interdependence become resilient beyond measure. The universe warns us not because destruction is inevitable, but because disconnection is unsustainable. Repairing the commons begins with seeing differently. Your neighbor is not competition, but ally. The stranger is not threat, but mirror. The river is not resource, but relative. The air is not background, but breath. When perception shifts, action follows. You begin to share food, to lend skills, to gather in circles of mutual support. You begin to fight for clean water, not just for yourself, but for children you may never meet. Repair also requires courage to challenge the systems that perpetuate fragmentation. This may mean questioning economic models that demand endless extraction, or cultural narratives that glorify independence while ignoring interdependence. To repair the commons is to reclaim the truth. We survive together or not at all. On the personal level, the commons are also emotional. Shared trust, shared compassion, shared responsibility for one another's well-being. When you offer listening without judgment, when you share your calm in a room of panic, when you hold another's burden for a while, you are repairing the emotional commons. Every act of generosity deposits resilience into the shared account of humanity. Do not underestimate the power of small collective gestures, a group of neighbors who agree to check on each other during storms, a circle of friends who rotate meals during crisis, a community garden that feeds dozens when supply chains fail. These are not luxuries, they are lifelines. and they are proof that repairing the commons begins not with governments, but with you and those closest to you. The last warning is clear. The age of radical isolation is ending. The new era will belong to those who remember how to weave themselves into the fabric of shared life. The commons must be repaired, for in that repair lies our greatest hope. Step forward, then, not as an isolated unit, but as a thread in a vast tapestry. Share what you have, protect what belongs to all. See yourself not as owner, but as steward. In this you align with the deepest truth, that life itself is a commons, and the more you tend it, the more it will sustain you when the old myths fall away. Chapter 19. Economies of Enough. We live in an age intoxicated by more profit, more possessions, more recognition, more speed. The word enough has been pushed to the margins, dismissed as mediocrity, as if satisfaction were a sin and insatiability the only virtue. Yet the universe's last warning pulses with insistence. This myth of more has reached its breaking point. We cannot build a future on appetites that never rest. We must remember the sacredness of enough. Enough does not mean scarcity. Scarcity is the lie that there is never sufficient, that we must compete and hoard because the pie is too small. Enough is the wisdom that life already provides balance if we honor it. Scarcity breeds fear. Enough breeds gratitude. Scarcity makes us clutch. Enough opens our hands. Scarcity shrivels communities into isolated fortresses. Enough weaves them back into circles of sharing. Imagine a village that learns the art of enough. Instead of every household striving to outbuild the other, resources are pooled, meals are shared. No one is left starving while others drown in excess. Children grow in the security of knowing their neighbors will care for them. Elders rest knowing they will not be discarded. This is not utopia. It is the natural order, disrupted only by systems designed to glorify endless hunger. The truth is that the earth already embodies enough. Seasons yield what is required. Forests produce in rhythms of balance. Rivers offer water freely until they are poisoned by greed. The problem is not nature's insufficiency, but humanity's forgetting. We have mistaken consumption for life, and in doing so, we devour the very foundations of existence. The last warning is a reminder. If we do not learn to live by economies of enough, the systems we worship will consume themselves into nothing. On a personal level, enough is a profound practice. It is pausing after a meal and asking, "Am I nourished?" instead of chasing another bite. It is looking at your possessions and asking, "Do these serve me or do they weigh me down?" It is honoring your time, refusing to fill every hour with endless striving, and instead creating space for silence, for connection, for rest. Enough restores rhythm where addiction to more creates chaos. But enough also challenges our identities. We have been trained to equate worth with accumulation. To say, "I have enough," is to step out of the cycle of proving. It is to root your value not in possessions but in presence, not in wealth but in wholeness. This is terrifying to those addicted to the ladder of comparison, but liberating to those weary of climbing. Communities that embrace enough become resilient. When crisis strips away luxuries, they already know how to share. When systems collapse, they already know how to sustain one another. Enough is not weakness, it is strength disguised as simplicity. It is the discipline that keeps resources flowing instead of stagnating in the vaults of the few. The universe whispers this truth. There is abundance woven into creation, but it is abundance for all, not for a handful at the expense of the many. Enough is the sacred boundary where abundance is shared, where life is honored, where dignity is preserved. Beyond enough, abundance turns toxic. Below enough, suffering festers. Between them lies the golden balance of thriving. So ask yourself daily, what is enough for me? Enough love, enough food, enough recognition, enough rest. Honor the answers, and you will discover a wealth that no currency can purchase. For when you live by economies of enough, you step out of the machinery of greed and into the rhythm of life itself. Chapter 20. Information Weather. In the old world, people feared storms of rain and fire, earthquakes and drought. In the new world, we face storms of another kind. Torrents of data, lightning strikes of headlines, floods of rumors, hurricanes of opinion. We live inside a new climate, the climate of information, and like any climate, it can nourish or destroy. The universe's last warning is not only about earth and sky, but also about the weather systems of words, images, and signals that shape our minds. Information weather is invisible yet relentless. Wake in the morning and already alerts pound against your consciousness. A war erupts halfway across the world. Markets tremble, a celebrity falls. A meme rises. Each headline is like a gust of wind, tugging your attention this way and that, until by evening you feel battered, though you never left your chair. The body registers this as stress, the spirit as despair. Yet most assume this is simply the cost of living modern life. But just as ancient peoples learned to read clouds and winds, we must learn to read the patterns of information weather. Not every storm requires shelter. Not every lightning flash is a sign of doom. Many are noise designed to keep you disoriented, to pull your attention from the deeper rhythms that actually matter. The skilled navigator knows when to close the shutters and when to walk calmly through the rain. The first skill is discernment. Ask, who benefits from my attention here? Every headline, every post, every notification is an attempt to harvest your gaze. Some feed you truth, others feed you fear. Learn to feel the difference. Truth, even when painful, leaves you clearer. Manipulation leaves you agitated, craving more but never satisfied. This is how you know whether the storm is natural or manufactured. The second skill is rhythm. Just as no one walks into a thunderstorm without preparation, do not walk unguarded into the flood of information. Set times for when you enter and when you leave. Do not bathe constantly in the storm. Create pockets of stillness where no data intrudes, where your own thoughts can breathe. Without rhythm, you drown. With rhythm, you navigate. The third skill is shelter. Build sanctuaries in your information life as you would in your physical one. Curate sources that nourish rather than deplete. Surround yourself with voices of depth rather than shallowness, of clarity rather than noise. Create communities where conversations deepen understanding instead of scattering it. Shelter does not mean ignorance. It means choosing environments that protect your mind from erosion. The danger of information weather is not only overwhelm, but manipulation. Entire societies can be swept into storms of disinformation, their collective attention hijacked until they cannot see truth, even when it stands before them. This is why discernment and rhythm are no longer luxuries. They are survival skills. The universe's last warning speaks here with urgency. Your attention is the most valuable currency you own. Guard it with the same vigilance you guard your food and water, for in the age of storms, attention determines whether you collapse in confusion or stand steady in clarity. Remember, not every cloud is a threat. Some bring rain that nourishes. Not every silence is ignorance. Some silences are fertile fields where wisdom grows. Learn to read the weather of information with care, and you will no longer be tossed like a leaf in the wind. You will become like a tree, rooted and steady, swaying but never falling, no matter how fierce the storm of words becomes. Chapter 21. Regenerative Rhythm. Every living system pulses in rhythm. Hearts beat, lungs inhale and exhale, tides rise and fall, seasons cycle through growth and decay. Yet humanity, intoxicated by the myth of constant acceleration, has attempted to sever itself from these rhythms. We glorify unbroken work, endless productivity, perpetual forward motion, but the universe's last warning is etched into our very fatigue. What refuses rhythm will collapse. What honors rhythm regenerates. Regenerative rhythm is not simply about rest. It is about remembering that life flourishes through cycles, not through straight lines. Trees grow in seasons, not in endless upward surges. Even stars collapse before they are reborn. When we demand constancy of ourselves, constant success, constant output, constant certainty, we step out of the dance of creation. And when we step out, we weaken. The first rhythm is work and rest. Without rest, work becomes depletion. Without work, rest becomes stagnation. Balance requires both. Yet many live as though stopping is failure. They push until the body rebels, until sickness or breakdown forces a pause. Regenerative rhythm invites us to pause before collapse, to honor rest as sacred, as essential as action. The second rhythm is expansion and contraction. There are seasons to reach outward, building, connecting, creating, and seasons to withdraw, inward focus, integration, stillness. Contraction is not regression. It is composting, the turning inward that makes expansion fruitful. When you ignore contraction, expansion becomes hollow. When you honor contraction, expansion becomes sustainable. The third rhythm is grief and joy. Modern culture often exalts joy and denies grief. But grief is not the enemy of joy. It is its partner. Grief cleanses, makes space for deeper joy. Joy heals, makes grief bearable. Together they form the heartbeat of emotional truth. To deny either is to stunt the heart's rhythm. Regenerative rhythm is also collective. Communities thrive when they honor cycles, celebrating harvest, mourning losses together, renewing vows each generation. Societies collapse when they demand constant growth, endless consumption, perpetual forward march. Collapse is simply nature forcing rhythm back where it has been forgotten. To practice regenerative rhythm is to step back into alignment with life. Begin with your own body. Ask, when do I need to act? When do I need to rest? Do not wait for burnout to answer for you. Ask your emotions. What grief needs expression? What joy seeks celebration? Let them alternate like tides cleansing and filling the shore. On a broader level, ask your community, how do we create cycles of giving and receiving, of labor and leisure, of mourning and celebration? Without these rhythms, society runs itself ragged. With them, society becomes resilient, endlessly able to renew itself. The universe whispers, the future belongs not to those who sprint endlessly, but to those who pace themselves with the rhythm of stars and seasons. Regeneration is not a luxury, it is the only sustainable path. So listen, breathe, step into the cycles of your life. Allow ebb and flow, rise and fall, grief and joy, silence and song. When you live by regenerative rhythm, collapse no longer terrifies you, for you know that endings are seeds, contractions are preludes, and rest is not death, but preparation for rebirth. This is the rhythm of creation itself, and to honor it is to ensure that even in the greatest upheaval, life will continue to bloom through you. Chapter 22, Leadership Without Theater. True leadership has never been about costumes of power or stages of performance, though much of history would have us believe otherwise. Palaces, podiums, golden crowns, and choreographed speeches, all of these have been mistaken for leadership. But when the universe sends its last warning, none of these theatrics matter. The storms do not bow to titles. The earth does not yield to applause. What endures is quiet authority, the kind that does not demand attention but creates trust, the kind that steadies those around it without spectacle. Leadership without theater begins in listening. Not the kind of listening that waits impatiently to speak, but the kind that receives the weight of another's words, as though they were sacred stones placed into open hands. In times of change, people do not need speeches polished to perfection. They need someone who can hear the trembling underneath their voices, someone who can sit with silence long enough to understand what is not being said. To listen deeply is to lead already, for it proves you are not blinded by your own performance. The second mark of leadership without theater is transparency. When systems collapse, secrecy corrodes trust faster than hunger corrodes bodies. The leader who admits uncertainty, who confesses not knowing, paradoxically becomes the safest guide. This honesty is not weakness. It is an invitation for collective wisdom to arise. Theater pretends at certainty to maintain control. True leadership says, "I do not know, but together we will find the way." Such words anchor communities because they affirm that truth is more important than image. The third mark is accountability. Power is often measured by how many can be commanded, but in truth, power is measured by how much responsibility one is willing to carry. Leadership without theater shoulders blame instead of casting it, takes ownership instead of deflection, and demonstrates through action that integrity is not negotiable. A leader may stumble, but when accountability is immediate, trust deepens. Theater hides mistakes under velvet curtains. True leadership turns on the light and cleans the room with everyone watching. In personal life, leadership without theater looks like consistency. It is the parent who shows up even when exhausted, the friend who keeps promises when it would be easier to vanish, the worker who maintains integrity even when no one is watching. Small acts of steadiness ripple outward, and those who witness them are reminded that reliability is more valuable than charisma. On the collective scale, leadership without theater is desperately needed. Our world has been flooded with figures who perform leadership while avoiding its substance. They gesture at solutions while feeding division. They prioritize appearance over action. But the universe's last warning demands something different. It demands leaders who do not treat communities as audiences, but as partners. Leaders who do not crave the stage, but the circle. Leaders who measure success not by popularity, but by healing. You too are called to this form of leadership. Do not wait for crowns or platforms. Ask instead, who looks to me for steadiness? Who is shaped by my presence? Who listens when I speak? These are your spheres of influence, and within them, theater is unnecessary. Presence, honesty, and responsibility are enough. When storms rage, the theatrics collapse. But the leader who stands quietly, who listens, who admits truth, who carries weight without spectacle, this leader becomes a lighthouse, and those around them will remember it was not the crown or the stage that saved us. It was the one who led without theater. Chapter 23, Education for the Edge. Education has too often been mistaken for the memorization of facts, the accumulation of degrees, the recitation of systems designed to maintain the old order. But the universe's last warning makes clear that the old order is disintegrating. What use is education that trains children for jobs that will vanish? What use is education that rehearses obedience when creativity is required? What use is education that rewards silence when the future demands voice? The age we are entering requires a different schooling. Education for the edge. Education for the edge begins with teaching adaptability. In a world where structures topple overnight, those who cling to rigid formulas are crushed. The adaptable survive. Adaptability is not aimless flexibility. It is the cultivated ability to perceive patterns, shift strategies, and remain rooted in principles even when methods change. Teach a child how to adapt, and you have given them a compass more valuable than any map. The second pillar of edge education is ethics. For too long, education has prioritized intelligence without wisdom, training minds to outwit but not to outcare. Yet brilliance without ethics builds weapons instead of solutions, exploitation instead of equity. In times of turning, we must remember, survival without morality is not survival at all. It is prolonged collapse. Education for the edge must train hearts as much as minds, teaching compassion, stewardship, and the sacredness of interdependence. The third pillar is pattern literacy. The ancients read stars, rivers, and animal migrations to predict the future. Modernity mocks such skills, yet we too must learn to read patterns. Ecological shifts, social currents, technological risks. Edge education equips people to detect the early tremors of change, to interpret them, and to respond before they erupt into disaster. To read patterns is to be less surprised, less paralyzed, more prepared. Practical skills also return to center. How to grow food, how to mend, how to build, how to listen, how to lead circles, how to hold grief. These are not luxuries, they are survival literacies. The last warning tells us bluntly, a culture that cannot feed itself, clothe itself, heal itself, and govern itself will not endure. Education for the edge recenters these basics, not as archaic curiosities, but as lifelines. But the deepest shift is this: education for the edge must teach people to question. Blind obedience to collapsing systems is suicide. Students must learn not to parrot answers, but to craft new ones, not to memorize narratives, but to interrogate them. Questioning is not rebellion, it is responsibility. Without it, the myths of destruction continue unchallenged. In your own life, education for the edge means committing to lifelong learning. Do not assume that because you are grown, your schooling is finished. Every day the universe teaches through your failures, your relationships, your environment. Pay attention. Read new fields, learn new skills. Sit at the feet of both elders and children. To stop learning at the edge is to fall behind the curve of transformation. Communities, too, must reclaim education as communal practice. Schools alone cannot carry the weight. Families, neighborhoods, circles of friends, all must become sites of learning. Every meal shared can be a lesson in gratitude, every gathering a seminar in resilience, every ritual a textbook in meaning. When education flows through daily life, it no longer feels like burden, but like breath. The last warning is clear. The future does not belong to those who know the most facts. It belongs to those who can adapt with integrity, perceive patterns, embody ethics, and continue learning long after diplomas fade. Education for the edge is not preparation for a stable world. It is training for the frontier where stability has dissolved. And at that frontier, only those willing to keep learning will survive and shape what comes next. Chapter 24, Health as a Circle. For too long, health has been reduced to an individual pursuit, numbers on a chart, pills in a bottle, private bodies managed by private professionals. But the universe's last warning reverberates with clarity. Health is not linear, not individual, not mechanical. Health is a circle. When one part suffers, all parts are weakened. When one part heals, all parts are lifted. To forget this is to live fragmented, sickened not only in body, but in soul and society. The first circle is personal health. Your body is not a machine to be optimized endlessly. It is a living ecosystem, a landscape requiring care. To treat it with cruelty, to drown it in toxins, to drive it without rest, is to dishonor the vessel that carries your consciousness. Yet personal health is not only diet and exercise. It is rhythm, breath, connection, joy. A body that moves with gratitude, rests in rhythm, and breathes deeply is already halfway to healing. The second circle is relational health. No body thrives in isolation. Studies confirm what souls already know. Loneliness erodes immunity, while belonging heals. Health is woven in eye contact, laughter, touch, conversation, presence. To ignore relationships while chasing physical fitness is to miss half the medicine. When your relationships are fractured, your health fractures too. Healing the circle of health requires tending not only your body but your bonds. The third circle is communal health. Communities sick with violence, inequality, or neglect cannot produce healthy individuals. Pollution of the social fabric is as dangerous as pollution of the air. If your neighborhood is unsafe, if your society is unjust, your body carries the weight in cortisol, anxiety, and exhaustion. To heal fully, we must heal the collective. Justice is medicine, equity is therapy, compassion is immunization. The fourth circle is planetary health. You cannot separate your well-being from the soil that grows your food, the water that fills your cells, the air that feeds your breath. To poison rivers is to poison veins. To scorch forests is to scorch lungs. The illusion of separation between human health and planetary health is perhaps the deadliest of all. The last warning insists, to heal the human, heal the earth. Health as a circle requires a profound humility. You are not only responsible for yourself, you are responsible to everything you touch. Your choices ripple outward. When you buy food, you vote for agricultural practices. When you discard waste, you shape ecosystems. When you treat others, you echo messages into their bodies that linger as either balm or wound. Every act is participation in the circle of health. To live in this awareness is not to drown in guilt, but to awaken to possibility. Every act of care ripples outward too. A meal shared nourishes body and bond. A tree planted strengthens generations. A kind word lowers stress, strengthens immunity. Healing is viral, just as sickness is. The circle can spiral downward into illness or upward into vitality, depending on how we choose to move within it. The universe calls us back to this remembering. Health cannot be hoarded. You cannot be well in a sick world. You cannot breathe freely while others choke. True health is shared, collective, circular. If you wish to heal yourself, heal your circle. If you wish to heal your circle, heal your world. So breathe deeply, eat reverently, love generously, act responsibly. Not because these make you individually fit, but because they strengthen the entire circle you are part of. The last warning is not simply about survival. It is about remembering that healing is never solitary. It is always communal, always circular, always shared. And when you honor health as a circle, you step into alignment with the wholeness that life has always offered, waiting only to be remembered. Chapter 25. Beauty as Fuel. When the world shakes, when the scaffolding of certainty splinters, when warnings arrive like thunder in the night, what gives the soul its courage to continue? It is not always reason, not always discipline, not even survival instinct alone. Often it is beauty. The universe's last warning arrives not only with a list of dangers, but with a quiet reminder. Without beauty, endurance crumbles. Beauty is not luxury, it is fuel. Consider the moments you remember most vividly from your life. Perhaps a sunset spilled molten gold across the sea, or a piece of music pierced your chest so cleanly it left you breathless. Perhaps you witnessed the birth of a child, or the resilience of a flower-splitting stone, or the unguarded kindness of a stranger's smile. These are not trivial memories. They are the power plants of your spirit. They charge you with the strength to continue even when despair snarls its teeth. Beauty operates differently than logic. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It simply shows itself, and in showing itself, it bypasses the defenses of fear. In the middle of crisis, a bird singing can break open a heart that was clenched in hopelessness. A poem spoken at the right moment can ignite an entire community into remembering why they fight for survival. Beauty does not distract from danger. It provides the energy required to face it. Yet our world has taught us to treat beauty as ornament. We cut funding for art before we cut funding for weapons. We dismiss beauty as frivolous, as though it were frosting and not bread. But history reveals the opposite. It was beauty, songs, dances, rituals, paintings that carried enslaved peoples through their suffering. It was beauty that gave resistance movements their courage, their banners, their chants. It was beauty that allowed survivors of catastrophe to find joy again, to rebuild not only walls but meaning. In your own life, beauty is not an afterthought. It is sustenance. The universe's warning demands that you learn to fuel yourself with it daily. Ask yourself, what sights, what sounds, what gestures awaken me? Do I surround myself with color or only gray walls? Do I allow music to wash through me, or do I starve my ears with noise? Do I walk under trees, or do I hurry through concrete corridors without looking up? Beauty is also relational. You create it in how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you treat others. A kind word spoken gently is beautiful. A table set with care, even for a simple meal, is beautiful. A note left for a loved one, a flower placed on a stranger's grave, a story told with reverence. These are sparks of beauty that fuel more powerfully than any lecture or command. When collapse looms, beauty becomes an act of rebellion. To sing when the world says despair, to dance when the world says collapse, to paint when the world says profit. These acts declare that humanity is not machine, that the soul will not surrender to numbers and fear. Beauty asserts dignity when all else is stripped away. The last warning is this: do not abandon beauty in your preparations. Stock your cupboards with food, yes, but also with candles. Collect water, yes, but also poems. Learn survival skills, yes, but also songs. For when the darkest nights arrive, it will not be enough to keep the body alive. The spirit, too, must be nourished, or survival will feel like death stretched long. So cultivate beauty daily. Notice it, create it, share it. Let it fill you until despair cannot find room. For beauty is the breath of the universe, reminding you that even in endings, life still makes art. And with that art, we remember why survival matters, not just to live, but to live beautifully. Chapter 26, When the Lights Flicker Again. There is a moment more frightening than collapse itself, the moment of relapse. The lights return briefly, and we believe the storm has passed. We drop our vigilance, relax our practices, forget the warnings. Then the lights flicker again, reminding us that change does not arrive in one neat wave, but in tides, in pulses, in cycles of stability and upheaval. The universe's last warning insists, prepare not only for the storm, but for its return. The danger of false stability is complacency. After crisis, people long so desperately for normalcy that they clutch at any resemblance of it. They convince themselves the danger is gone, the warning expired. They stop tending to the practices that kept them steady: meditation, community, skill building, gratitude. They forget, and in forgetting, they make themselves vulnerable to the next surge. But those who endure understand that change comes in layers. One structure collapses, another wobbles, a third reveals cracks. Lights flicker not once, but many times. Each flicker is an invitation. Will you pretend the outage never happened, or will you build resilience into the very wiring of your life? When the lights flicker again, remember that panic is optional. You have seen darkness before. You know what to do. You know how to gather candles, how to breathe deeply, how to reach for one another. The return of instability is not betrayal. It is continuation. The universe never promised one storm only. It promised cycles, and it asked you to be steady enough to weather them. Relapse plans are sacred. Just as those healing from addiction know they must prepare for temptation, so must we prepare for moments when the world trembles again. Write down what steadied you during the last darkness. Keep it close. Did daily ritual help? Did connection to community anchor you? Did journaling, prayer, or song restore your hope? These must become your emergency kit, as essential as food or medicine. Do not despise the flicker. It is reminder, not punishment. It teaches humility, showing us that growth is not linear, but spiral. You will revisit lessons again and again, each time at a deeper level. The practice is not to avoid revisiting, but to meet it with greater steadiness than before. Communities, too, must prepare for relapse. When crisis seems to end, resist the urge to dismantle mutual aid networks or abandon gatherings of support. Keep them alive. Keep practicing together, because when the lights flicker again, and they will, you will need each other once more. The strongest societies are those that treat resilience as a permanent rhythm, not a temporary measure. The last warning is clear. Do not mistake reprieve for permanence. Do not mistake flickering light for sunrise. Prepare your heart for cycles, and you will not be surprised. Prepare your life for rhythm, and you will not collapse. Learn to live as if storms are part of the climate, not interruptions to it. For this is the truth. Life will flicker again and again, but those who remember will not be undone. They will become the keepers of steady light. Chapter 27, The Long Yes. In the cacophony of crisis, many yeses rise and fall like sparks, momentary commitments born of urgency, extinguished as quickly as they ignite. People promise to change, to rebuild, to love more fiercely, but when the pressure eases, so do their vows. The universe's last warning cuts through this cycle. The future cannot be built on fleeting sparks. It requires the long yes, the vow that endures, the choice that is remade every day, the devotion that survives when enthusiasm fades. The long yes is different from excitement. Excitement burns quickly. It thrives on novelty, on adrenaline, but the long yes is quieter, steadier. It is the couple who remain faithful long after romance cools. It is the activist who continues planting trees decades after the cameras have left. It is the individual who continues their daily practices of meditation, gratitude, and care even when no crisis demands it. The long yes is the engine of transformation, for without it, beginnings collapse into endings with no progress in between. Consider what has endured in your life. It is not the projects begun with fireworks that shaped you most. It is the habits, the relationships, the practices that remained through storms. A garden tended for years, a friendship carried through decades, a ritual practiced daily. These are the anchors. The long yes is what creates depth, where everything else chases speed. But the long yes is demanding. It requires patience when results are slow, faith when evidence wavers, persistence when fatigue whispers. It requires remembering why you began again and again until that memory itself becomes a mantra. The universe warns us that without the long yes, we will continue recycling collapse, mistaking short bursts of passion for lasting transformation. To practice the long yes, begin by identifying what truly matters to you. Not what is glamorous, not what others applaud, but what your soul knows is essential. Then commit, write it, speak it, vow it. And when distractions arrive, return. When fatigue presses, return. When despair tempts, return. The power of the long yes is not perfection, but return, again and again, until the vow is not just something you keep, but something that keeps you. Communities thrive on long yeses. When neighbors commit to caring for one another, not just in disaster, but in ordinary days, trust deepens. When societies commit to justice, not just in moments of outrage, but across generations, healing occurs. When humanity commits to the planet, not just when headlines scream, but as a permanent covenant, regeneration unfolds. The last warning is this: fleeting commitments will not save us. Only the long yes, the vow that transcends convenience, that weaves itself into daily life, that becomes identity has the power to carry us through the turning. Ask yourself, what is my long yes? What is the vow I am willing to live and relive until it becomes not what I do but who I am? For when the dust settles, it will not be the sparks that shaped the future. It will be the fires that were tended patiently, faithfully, with unwavering devotion. And those fires are lit by the long yes. Chapter 28. Harvest and Seed. Every season ends with a double gesture, a harvest and a planting. The farmer does not gather grain without also returning seed to the soil. To harvest without seeding is to exhaust the earth. To seed without harvesting is to waste abundance. The universe's last warning reminds us that every ending, every collapse, every threshold demands both gestures at once. We must gather what has ripened, and we must plant what will grow again. Harvest means honoring what has come before. Even as structures fall, there is fruit worth collecting. Lessons, relationships, resilience, creativity, these are harvest. The mistake of crisis is to discard everything in the rubble, to assume that if one wall crumbles, the entire house was worthless. But in truth, even ruins contain treasures. Think of ancient cities unearthed centuries later, pottery shards, fragments of song, carvings that still speak. Collapse does not erase value. It reveals what is essential by stripping away the rest. Ask yourself, what have I grown in this season that deserves to be harvested? Have I cultivated patience? Have I deepened love? Have I learned courage, built trust, refined discernment? These are not abstract virtues. They are fruit to be gathered, stored, and shared. To forget to harvest is to enter the next season empty-handed, when in truth, you are already rich with lessons and strength. But harvest is only half. Without seeding, the cycle halts. Seeding means planting intentions, practices, and commitments into the soil of tomorrow. It is dreaming beyond collapse, acting beyond fear, envisioning beyond endings. When you plant, you declare, I believe in future. Even when evidence whispers otherwise, the act of planting affirms that life continues. That hope is not naive, but necessary. Consider the rituals of those who came before. After war, they planted gardens. After famine, they sang songs of plenty. After death, they birthed children. Each act was both grief and faith, mourning and renewal. The harvest fed the present, the seed promised the future. Without this rhythm, civilizations would have perished long ago. On a personal level, seeding might look like journaling new intentions, creating art that imagines tomorrow, teaching children skills that will outlast you. On a communal level, seeding might look like building networks of mutual care, designing economies rooted in enough, restoring forests, protecting rivers. Every act of planting is a defiance of despair, a refusal to let collapse have the last word. Harvest and seed are not separate. What you harvest becomes what you seed. Lessons become wisdom planted in others. Resilience becomes courage planted in children. Creativity becomes culture planted in community. Nothing is wasted when you live this rhythm. The last warning urges us to remember, endings are not only loss, they are harvest. Beginnings are not only hope, they are seed. To miss either gesture is to dishonor the cycle of life, but to live both fully is to step into the eternal rhythm that has carried humanity through every threshold before and will carry us through again. So gather your fruit, name your lessons, celebrate your growth, then plant. Speak your intentions, share your wisdom, design your future. For the harvest is today, but the seed is tomorrow, and tomorrow waits for you. Chapter 29, The Quiet After. There is always a hush that follows the storm. After thunder rolls and winds tear branches from their roots, a strange stillness descends. The birds do not sing yet, the rivers have not settled, but the air itself is heavy with pause. This is the quiet after. The universe's last warning whispers here, too, for many rush past this silence, eager to rebuild, eager to return to motion. Yet the quiet after is not emptiness. It is the most fertile silence you will ever encounter. The quiet after holds the residue of all that has been broken and all that has survived. It is an in-between space, neither chaos nor renewal, a threshold too easily overlooked. In this quiet, the nervous system recalibrates. In this quiet, the soul integrates. Without it, we carry forward fragments, unprocessed grief, unfinished lessons, unhealed wounds. We rebuild too fast, layering new structures on shaky ground. To honor the quiet after is to rest intentionally in the stillness, to let yourself breathe without rushing, to let your community pause without demanding immediate productivity. It is to sit with the rubble and ask, what have we lost? What have we learned? What do we carry? This is mourning, yes, but it is also meaning-making. Without pause, loss becomes scar tissue. With pause, loss becomes wisdom. The quiet after is uncomfortable. Many avoid it because silence feels like emptiness, like staring into void. But silence is not void. It is womb. It is the place where the next reality gestates, unseen. If you can resist the urge to fill it with noise, you will discover its gifts: clarity, vision, renewal. The universe speaks most clearly in the quiet after, not in the frenzy of collapse. On a personal scale, this means creating space after endings. When relationships close, when jobs end, when homes are left behind, resist the urge to immediately replace them. Sit in the gap. Feel the emptiness. Let it teach you what mattered, what did not, what you long for next. On a collective scale, this means not rushing to rebuild systems exactly as they were. The pause is necessary to ask, should we rebuild the same way? Or is something entirely new required? The quiet after is also sacred for gratitude. In the stillness, you notice what survived, who stood with you, what strength you did not know you had. Gratitude becomes possible only when the noise stops, when you can finally see clearly what remains. This gratitude fuels the next chapter, giving you energy to plant seeds wisely. The last warning says this: do not waste the quiet after. Do not fear it, do not rush it. Enter it as you would enter a temple, barefoot, reverent, listening. The quiet after is not absence, it is presence at its purest. It is where the whispers of the universe are loudest, waiting to tell you what to carry forward and what to release forever. So breathe, be still, let silence stretch. Trust that in the quiet after you are not doing nothing. You are doing the most important work of all, listening. Chapter 30, Dawn Agreements. After the night of warnings, after storms and silence, comes dawn. Not the return to what was before, but the emergence of what is next. Dawn is fragile. It carries both promise and danger, for how we begin determines what we build. The universe's last warning leads here: the need for dawn agreements, conscious covenants about how we will live in the world that follows. Dawn agreements are not contracts written in law alone. They are vows spoken in hearts, whispered between families, affirmed by communities, embodied in actions. They are the promises we make not because we are forced, but because we are awake. Every dawn offers this chance, but few seize it. We often stumble into new eras, carrying the debris of old patterns. This time, we must choose differently. What agreements will you make with yourself? Perhaps to live with presence, to guard your attention, to practice gratitude, to honor your body, to speak with integrity. These vows become the compass that guides you when distractions tempt. Without them, the momentum of the old world drags you back. With them, you walk steadily into the new. What agreements will you make with others? Perhaps to listen before reacting, to share resources instead of hoarding, to honor boundaries instead of exploiting, to remember that we rise or fall together. These communal agreements are the scaffolding of new societies. Without them, collapse repeats. With them, trust grows, and with trust, civilizations thrive. What agreements will we make with the earth? Perhaps to take only what we need, to restore what we harm, to recognize forests and rivers as kin, not commodities, to return to rhythms of regeneration instead of extraction. Without these, the planet itself will rebel and no dawn will last. With them, balance returns and life flourishes. Dawn agreements must be spoken, yes, but more importantly, lived. Each morning is an opportunity to renew them, to recommit even when fatigue sets in. They are not about perfection, they are about persistence. The power of an agreement is not that it is kept flawlessly, but that it is kept faithfully, returned to again and again until it shapes identity. The last warning culminates here. Without dawn agreements, we risk wandering aimlessly into cycles of collapse. With them, we carry forward wisdom, resilience, and hope. Agreements are anchors, lighthouses, seeds. They are how we remember that the night was not in vain, that the warnings were not wasted, that we are capable of becoming more than what we were. So pause at this threshold. Ask yourself, what vows am I ready to carry into the new light? Write them, speak them, share them, live them. Let them be your offering to the dawn, your promise to the universe, your covenant with life. For dawn is here, fragile and fierce, and the agreements you make now will echo for generations. Step forward then, not empty-handed, but vow-filled. Carry your agreements like torches. Let them light the path. For the night has passed, the warnings have been spoken, and the dawn has arrived. The question is no longer whether everything will change. The question is, who will you become now that it has? Chapter 31, The Keeper of Embers. When great fires burn out, all that remains are embers, glowing fragments of heat, small and fragile, yet powerful enough to reignite worlds. The universe's last warning teaches that transformation does not end with collapse or even dawn. It continues with the long, patient task of tending embers. For the future is not built in roaring flames alone, but in the quiet vigilance of those who refuse to let the light die when the spectacle has faded. The keeper of embers is not always the one in front, not the leader with the loudest voice or the builder of monuments. Often it is the grandmother who whispers stories to children, keeping memory alive. It is the healer who preserves herbal knowledge when others rush toward synthetic cures. It is the neighbor who insists on gathering the community for meals, even when exhaustion tempts everyone to isolate. The Ember Keeper is rarely celebrated, but without them, the next fire never comes. Tending embers requires humility. They look insignificant, fragile, barely alive. Many walk past them, dismissing them as ashes, but those who understand know that within their glow lies potential more powerful than flame itself. Embers can travel hidden, carried across mountains, preserved through nights of cold, waiting for the right moment to burst into fire again. To protect them is to protect the possibility of renewal. In your own life, embers appear as small practices that seem too minor to matter. The journal you keep when no one reads, the prayer you whisper when no one listens, the seed you plant when no one notices. These are embers. They carry continuity, connecting who you were with who you are becoming. The danger is neglect. Embers untended will fade, but embers nurtured with breath and patience will one day blaze. Communities, too, must recognize their ember keepers. In times of crisis, when attention turns to dramatic actions and urgent demands, it is easy to forget the quiet ones preserving traditions, songs, rituals, languages. Yet when the storm passes, it is precisely these treasures that restore identity and meaning. To lose them is to lose the thread of who we are. To honor them is to ensure the tapestry of humanity continues unbroken. The universe warns us, do not despise small fires, do not overlook quiet practices, do not assume survival depends only on strength and speed. Sometimes survival depends on the one who stays behind in the ruins, cupping embers in fragile hands, shielding them from wind until others return. Be that keeper. Protect your embers, your values, your rituals, your stories. Share them carefully. Place them into the hands of those who will carry them forward. For when the next generation asks how we endured, it will not be the great battles they remember most. It will be the small fires kept alive through the long night. Chapter 32. The Bridge Between Worlds. Every threshold is a bridge. One side holds the old, the familiar, the decaying. The other holds the new, the unknown, the emerging. Most fear to cross. They stand in the middle, clinging to one side while gazing anxiously at the other. But the universe's last warning calls us to become not only crossers of bridges, but builders of them. People who weave connections between worlds so others may cross more easily. The bridge between worlds is not physical. It is built from imagination, language, trust, and vision. It is the teacher who helps students dream beyond the crumbling systems of today. It is the innovator who designs tools that honor both tradition and future. It is the artist who creates images of possibility, giving form to what does not yet exist. Every time you translate between despair and hope, between endings and beginnings, between collapse and rebirth, you are laying planks on the bridge. But bridges are fragile. They must be anchored to both shores. If you build only from the new, you sever from roots and history. If you build only from the old, you chain yourself to decay. True bridges honor both, the wisdom of ancestors and the vision of descendants. This requires humility, to listen backward and forward at once, to weave continuity instead of rupture. Crossing the bridge is not without risk. It sways in winds of doubt. It trembles under the weight of fear. Many hesitate, returning to the shore they know. But those who step forward, even trembling, discover something profound. The bridge itself strengthens under their feet. Movement builds momentum, and momentum draws others to follow. One brave crosser makes the path real for the many. On a personal scale, you are always crossing bridges. Every time you leave behind an old identity, an outdated belief, a harmful habit, you stand between worlds. Do you linger, clinging, afraid, or do you step forward, trusting that new life awaits? To cross is to trust the invisible architecture of growth, to surrender certainty for possibility. On a collective scale, humanity now stands on its widest bridge yet. One world of exploitation, division, and exhaustion is ending. Another world of balance, cooperation, and regeneration beckons. But the crossing is not automatic. We must choose. We must build. We must steady one another when fear tempts retreat. The universe's last warning is clear. The bridge will not hold if we do not step forward together. Become a bridge builder. Listen to the wisdom behind you. Imagine the possibilities ahead. Speak words that anchor both shores. Offer your hand to those afraid to cross. For in the end, survival is not simply reaching the other side. Survival is ensuring no one is left stranded in the middle. Chapter 33. The Eternal Return. After collapse, after dawn, after bridges are crossed and vows are spoken, something remarkable becomes clear. The cycle never ends. Life does not march in a straight line toward final perfection. It spirals. What seems like an ending is always a beginning. What feels like a singular warning is part of an eternal chorus. The universe's last warning is also its first, and it will echo again in generations to come. This is the eternal return. The eternal return is not repetition as punishment, but rhythm as teacher. Each cycle brings us back to thresholds we thought we had already crossed, but with deeper awareness, wider vision, greater capacity. The child becomes adult, the adult becomes elder, the elder returns to innocence. Civilizations rise, fall, rise again. The seasons circle endlessly, yet each spring feels new, each winter carries different weight. To live in awareness of the eternal return is to embrace humility. You will not solve everything once and for all. You will not end struggle forever. You will not create a utopia immune to decay, but you will participate in the ongoing dance of renewal, contributing your verse, your effort, your devotion. And that is enough. This awareness also brings freedom. If everything is returned, then failure is never final. Mistakes become compost. Endings become seeds. You need not despair at collapse, for collapse is simply one more movement in the cycle of return. What matters is not escaping the spiral, but learning to dance with it. Practically, this means cultivating rituals that honor cycles, daily practices that remind you of rhythm, sunrise and sunset, breath in and breath out, work and rest, seasonal practices that align you with earth, planting, harvesting, mourning, celebrating, lifelong practices that weave generations, stories told, wisdom passed, blessings spoken. These anchor you in the eternal return, reminding you that you are part of a larger dance. On the collective level, this awareness transforms politics, economies, and cultures. Instead of chasing endless growth, societies rooted in eternal return design for regeneration. Instead of denying death, they honor it as part of life. Instead of fearing change, they embrace it as renewal. The last warning is not an apocalypse, but an invitation. Will you resist the cycle and suffer, or align with it and thrive? The eternal return also whispers of mystery. Perhaps even the cosmos itself breathes in and out, expanding and contracting across millennia. Perhaps universes rise and fall as casually as seasons. Perhaps we are echoes of echoes, living stories told countless times, each iteration new yet familiar. If so, then your choices matter not because they end the story, but because they shape its next verse. So stand at the threshold of return with reverence. Know that warnings will come again, that collapses will come again, that dawns will come again. Do not despair, do not cling. Simply participate fully in this turning, giving your courage, your love, your devotion to the cycle. For in the end, eternity is not endless time, but endless return, and to live awake within it is to be free. The universe's last warning dissolves here into timelessness. For there is no last, only next, no final, only return. And the eternal question remains, will you awaken, will you remember, will you dance? Chapter 34, The Fire That Remembers. There is a fire older than history, older than empires, older than names carved in stone. It is the fire that remembers. When tribes huddled around flames beneath the night sky, they did not simply burn wood for warmth. They gathered around a living presence, a witness, a keeper of memory. Each spark carried stories of survival, each ember whispered of ancestors, each flame held continuity between generations. The universe's last warning calls us to return to that fire, not only literal flames, but the inner fire that holds memory and meaning when everything else crumbles. The fire that remembers is not about destruction. Flames that consume recklessly leave only ash. But the fire that remembers warms, illuminates, transforms raw food into nourishment, transforms darkness into safety. It is the fire of endurance, the steady burn that reminds us who we are. In times of upheaval, when the world feels like it has forgotten itself, this fire is essential. Inside you burns such a flame. You have felt it in moments when despair nearly swallowed you, but some inner spark refused extinction. You have felt it when old songs stirred tears you could not explain, when ancestral memories rose in your blood, when you stood at the edge of collapse yet knew, without reason, that you would rise again. That spark is the fire that remembers, alive within your very cells. To tend this fire requires attention. In a world saturated with distraction, the flame grows faint. We drown it with noise, numb it with excess, bury it under endless consumption. But when we sit in silence, when we breathe deeply, when we speak words of gratitude, we notice the glow again. Ritual feeds it, story fuels it, presence guards it. Communities also need this fire. In every culture there were circles around flames where stories were told. These gatherings were not entertainment, they were survival. Children learned who they were by hearing the stories of those who came before. Adults remembered courage by recounting the victories and struggles of ancestors. Around the fire, people were woven into continuity, anchored in belonging. To lose such gatherings is to sever the thread of memory, leaving each generation adrift. The fire that remembers also lives in art. Paintings, songs, carvings, dances, these are sparks preserved through time, carrying forward wisdom even when voices are silenced. When collapse strikes, we must not only preserve tools and technologies, we must also preserve art. For it is the ember that keeps our humanity alive. A community without art survives only in body. A community with art survives in soul. The universe warns us, do not let the fire go out. Do not let distraction smother it. Do not let cynicism dismiss it. For when the fire dies, memory dies, and when memory dies, we become prey to the same mistakes, repeating collapse without learning renewal. But when the fire is tended, we remember. We remember who we are, where we came from, why we endure. So light your fire within and without. Gather with others to tell stories, to sing, to share silence. Protect the embers of tradition, the flames of creativity, the sparks of hope. The fire that remembers is not only past, it is future, guiding us through the night toward dawn. And in its glow, the warnings of the universe are not terrors, but teachings, not endings, but reminders. Chapter 35. The Ocean of Belonging. Beneath the surface of individuality lies a vast ocean where all streams converge. You may think you are separate, isolated, drifting alone, but the truth is that every breath, every thought, every act ripples outward, merging with the whole. This is the ocean of belonging. The universe's last warning invites us to dive here, for it is in forgetting this ocean that humanity fractures, and it is in remembering it that humanity heals. The ocean of belonging has always been here. Every culture once knew it. Some called it the collective unconscious, others the great spirit, others the web of life. It is the understanding that your existence is not solitary but communal, not individual but interwoven. The tree does not breathe without the sun does not shine without the galaxy. You do not live without the countless lives around you. To deny this truth is to live as though a wave could exist without the sea. Belonging does not erase individuality. Each wave is distinct in form, each ripple unique. But every wave is also ocean, inseparable from the vastness. When you remember this, loneliness dissolves. You realize you are held in currents larger than your own will, supported by countless beings you will never meet. This belonging is not metaphor. It is fact. The air you breathe was exhaled by forests. The blood in your veins carries minerals from ancient seas. The thoughts in your mind echo words spoken by ancestors long forgotten. To live without awareness of belonging breeds despair. You believe you must carry everything alone. You hoard, compete, isolate, convince survival is solitary. But when you awaken to the ocean, you discover relief. You do not carry the burden alone. You are part of something immense, something capable of holding far more than you can. Practicing belonging means shifting perspective. When you meet another, see not stranger but kin. When you walk in nature, see not scenery but relatives. When you feel despair, remember you are not a single point in darkness. You are a note in a symphony, an atom in a universe, a wave in an endless sea. belonging also demands responsibility. To poison rivers is to poison yourself, for you are river. To harm others is to harm yourself, for you are others. Belonging is not only comfort, it is accountability. Every choice you make affects the ocean, and every wound you inflict on the whole ripples back to you. The universe's warning reminds us, forgetting belonging is the root of collapse. Remembering it is the seed of healing. On a personal level, belonging heals shame. Shame thrives on the illusion of separation. I am broken, I am unworthy, I am alone. But when you step into belonging, you realize your wounds are not isolating, they are shared. Others too carry grief, fear, longing. In belonging, shame dissolves, replaced by compassion for yourself and for others. On a collective level, belonging ends division. Racism, nationalism, exploitation, these are illusions of separateness. They are waves that forget they are ocean. When societies remember belonging, they no longer build systems of hierarchy and domination. They build systems of care and reciprocity. The ocean of belonging is not distant. You can enter it now in your next breath. Close your eyes. Feel air entering your lungs. Know it has touched countless lives before you. Feel your heartbeat. Know its rhythm echoes the tides. Feel your skin. Know it carries stardust billions of years old. You belong. You always have. You always will. The last warning is this: if humanity forgets the ocean, it will drown in illusion. But if humanity remembers, it will rise as one body, one breath, one great tide. Dive into the ocean of belonging. Let it wash away loneliness, fear, and division. Let it remind you that you are not alone and never have been. For in the ocean, we are home.